What if you found out that tomorrow is your last day on earth? Yep. You're passing over to the other side or wherever it is you're going. But I can almost hear in your head, oh my gosh, what's my bucket list? Who do I want to spend that time with if I only have one day? But I want to give you a question here. What would be those stories of your life that you wish you had passed on to your children, to other people, if tomorrow is your last day on earth? You probably have some powerful stories that you need to give voice to if tomorrow is your last day on earth. There's power in voicing your stories. And today that's what we're going to talk about. We're going to be talking about how to give voice to your stories. We're going to talk about some easy ways that you can step into becoming a storyteller of your life. I'm also going to give you some writing prompts that are pretty powerful, and then some ideas on different ways that you can record. So hello. You are listening to the No Brainers Empowering Possibility shows. These are dialogues of encouragement with fresh perspectives, invitations to ahas, a little bit of science, and a dash of behavioral psychology, and skills and tools that you can use today, right now. I'm your host, Roseanne Marsh. I'm the author of the teen and the parent empowerment curriculum called Level Up. And you are listening to episode number 71, Unleashing the Power of Your Personal Story. So I've had people say to me, I don't know, this kind of intimidates me to have to go back and relive my entire life. And I don't know if I'm really on the right path right now, so I don't see the value of going back and literally pulling scabs off again, reliving some parts of my life that I'm really not proud of. Or honestly, is there anything special that I have to be able to pass on? But no one knows the stories like we do. No one knows what we have gone through, and we have a very unique perspective, each and every single one of us. And every one of us has a voice that we can lend to the collective culture of our humanity. So unleashing the power of our personal story is done with two categories of people. One is it's for ourselves, and the second one is to share with other people and with the world. So today I'm going to look at 7 downsides of not writing your story, of not voicing and unleashing the power. And then I want you to decide, is it time for me to step into telling my story? Let's go through the 7. The first one I think is incredibly powerful because by not writing your story, we miss out on opportunities for self-reflection and personal growth. When you write that personal story, that allows you to reflect on your life experiences and identify those patterns and gain perspective and understanding of your journey. Without sharing or writing your story, you may miss out on a valuable opportunity for growth. When we're able to see patterns are really powerful. And when we see those similar things happening throughout our life, then we can stop and we can decide, is that a pattern I really want to have repeated in my life? Or is it time for me to set new goals? Okay, let me give you an example. One would be, as you start writing your history, you see that boundaries are constantly being crossed. So is now the time to rewrite your story? When we learn a better way to set boundaries, number one, we've missed opportunities for self-reflection. The second downside of not writing your story would be limited impact on others. Your personal story has the potential to inspire and educate and motivate others just because of the life experiences you've had. And it will connect you with those who have similarities to some of the experiences you have. By not sharing or writing your story, you miss out on positively impacting others that are going down the same path you are. And maybe you're a little bit ahead of them, or maybe there's somebody ahead of you, and you could lose that impact and that connection. Or another downside for not writing your story is that loss of historical record. Personal stories are really part of that tapestry of humanity. Every one of us has a string that kind of weaves through there. They say that to understand history is really to read the personal histories of people. If you didn't write your history, what would we miss out on? Now think about 2020, 2021. Years from now, when the future looks back on this time, what could they understand more because of the perspective you bring from the last couple years and what you've gone through? The world needs your narrative, and they need to understand the impact that life has had on you. Now, another downside for not writing your personal history would be lack of closure or resolution. Sharing or writing your personal story can provide that sense of closure to some of the things and experiences that you've had in your life. And it allows us to process those emotions and make sense out of our challenges and really find meaning in this journey that we're on, right? So without sharing or writing your story, you may be leaving some loose ends that really can be tied up quite nicely. I think it was Maya Angelou that said, "There is no greater agony than bearing an untold story within you." Does that resonate with any of you? I know it resonated with me when I heard that, because there are still stories that I desire to tell. So what is a downside of not telling your story? Number 5 is missed connections and missed support. By not sharing your personal story, you may miss connecting with others. Sharing your story can create that sense of community, support, understanding. You can get empathy and validation for your story and guidance from others who can really relate to those experiences that you're having. What's another downside of not writing your story? Well, it's limited self-expression. Truly, writing gives validation to your voice. It gives you the opportunity to kind of embrace your narrative and voice your truth and assert your identity. When you write that story, it puts a voice to your unique journey. Your story matters, and putting it into words validates your existence. The last downside for not writing your story would be unrealized potential. When we write out our history, we start finding purpose and meaning in our life. It allows us to start connecting those dots and seeing those puzzle pieces and how they kind of dovetail together. I heard years ago, no experience is ever wasted. And if we truly believe that, then I believe that we are learning from the experiences as we look back and we see the growth and the restraint and the resilience and the attributes that were formed just by the things that we went through. And it's the learning that we're taking away from that. That's the true story. It's the learning and the progression that really makes the difference in the world. Not only are we looking back, though, on those things that are hard, the failures, the things we didn't do right, we also have a chance to go through a journey of experience the joy and those beautiful things. We see what we focus on. We see what we focus on. So it's important to note there would be those that were, I'm not sure I'm convinced, I'm not sure I'm all in on that, but really take a moment and look at the downsides of not writing your personal history. We unleash our power by giving voice to our stories. Jimmy Neal Smith said, "We are all storytellers. We all live in a network of stories. There isn't a stronger connection between people than storytelling." I have to believe that. Science even tells us, and I'm a science person, true and true. I love this stuff. But when we listen to a story, it actually releases norepinephrine, and we get a greater connection with that other person that's telling the story. And then that connection with the storyteller comes back to us. And then as we tell those stories, the power of it ripples out and out and out and out. Isn't that powerful? To know that there's actually a hormonal connection we get when we start to hear stories that we resonate with. So what are some of those stories that I want my children to know and understand? Well, I want them to understand my adventures of living in Italy. Some of those things that I went through. I had left college. I was part of a dance group. I had 3 part-time jobs. I was a busy job. I had just gotten married, and I married an American basketball player. He was actually playing on an Italian league. So over there, they could have 1 American per team to kind of elevate the level of pallacanestro basketball. So he had lived there 4 years, and now I went over there to live with him another 4 years. So I moved over there, and let's talk about difference in culture. I came from, yes, middle America, university town, things happening, a little bit of drama. But I came into a country where everything was like in slow motion in comparison to what I was used to. Everybody was at the seaside for 3 months of the year. Everybody would link arms and walk down the cobblestone streets. The stores would all close except for the restaurants, and everyone would just enjoy their lunch. They knew how to savor life like nobody else. And the food, oh man, that was incredible. And I always knew when 5 o'clock rolled around, because then you'd start smelling olive oil and garlic sizzling in the pans and that fragrance wafting from the windows from every single apartment and house. It was amazing. I even had a chance to take ballet lessons from a prima ballerina from La Scala, the famous theater. Able to take pattern making classes because I was a fashion design major at that time, and see if I could get into with some of the couture homes. I felt like I was living a fairy tale life until I wasn't. And I remember that exact day when things changed. It was a day when I was driving from one little paese to the next, little town to the next, and there was a huge roadblock in front of me. And as I approached the roadblock, all of a sudden my car was surrounded by all these carabinieri. Carabinieri are not like the police, they're the under police, but another branch of the military. But these are like 16 to 18-year-olds with machine guns, and they're pointing it at my windshield and gesturing me to get out of the car. So I got out of the car, they had me stand against the car. I had no idea what they were talking about. They were talking so fast, but all I could understand was La Bionda, the blonde. I was like, what is going on? Then they gestured for me to open up my trunk. Well, I opened up the trunk, it was empty. When they saw it was empty, they were like, okay, go on your way. I was like, what was that all about? Well, it didn't just happen that time, it happened many times over the next couple months. But in the meantime, I had found out maybe what was going on in this country. The Prime Minister of Italy, Aldo Moro, had been kidnapped, and the country was in chaos. The Brigata Rossa, the Red Brigade, had kidnapped him, and they wanted 10 of the Red Brigade back in exchange for his life. Here's the kicker, though. The president of the country was like, better than Aldo Moro should die than we give in to kidnappers. Well, everyone was being searched, and it was always the trunks of the car that they were searching for. It was a crazy time to be there. And 55 days after he'd been kidnapped, they found him dead in a trunk of a car. So this was the equivalent of having the Vice President of the United States being assassinated. It was a crazy time. I started to see a different side of just my Pollyanna version of what Italy was. There was the yin and the yang of life. In the apartment building where I lived, there was a doorman that would make fun of the way I spoke Italian. I don't blame him, right? But one day he had a group of his friends, and he was enticing me to speak Italian. Little did he know that every night I would listen to him beat his wife. So I looked him in the face and I said, non picchiare la sua moglie. Don't beat your wife. I was finding my voice. I was living in Italy, and I was all these things now that I didn't know existed in life. The terrors, the mafia, etc. were in my face. I was growing up in a culture that was giving me the beautiful things and also some very, very dark things. We used to go to a pizzeria late at night, and it's because my husband's job was basketball in the evenings. We'd be there at 11 o'clock at night, and there were the same characters at the pizzeria every night. It was amazing. They were fun. It was kind of like going to Cheers, right? Everybody knew your name. And there was one particular character named Nero, and Nero had a lot of personality. Well, all of a sudden Nero disappeared, and I asked, well, where's Nero? And they said, well, he's gone to Napoli to just hang out. I go, oh, is he on vacanza? Is he on vacation then? No, he's just laying low. I'm like, is he all right? They said, oh, yeah. They said, you don't know what he does for a living, do you? I said, no, I don't. He goes, he's a paid assassin. Dorothy, we are not in Kansas anymore. These were the experiences that I was going through. And what I love about it is the fact that it grew me in a way that I could never have grown living in the United States. My friends were the richest of friends. That country is amazing. I felt honored to be able to spend some time there. But why do I want my kids to know these stories? I want them to understand that they're going to come up against things in life that are very different from what they've experienced. And it's going to grow in you some amazing things. Instead of fear it, it's to live it and to learn it. Now, there's going to be a lot of different reasons why you want your family to know some stories about your past. So I'm going to go back to the original question that I asked you at the very beginning. If tomorrow were your last day on this earth, what are those stories that you want to tell your kids, that you want to tell the world? What is that powerful message that you want to unleash, that you want to share? So how do we even get started? Well, I'm going to suggest two different ways. There are two ways that I've done it, and I love both of them. But one of them is just start a chronological line and go back through and kind of reconstruct what's happened in your life. I found that the more resources I had, the easier it was for me to remember. So I went back through photographs. I went back through papers that I had, and I was able to say, oh, that's right. I was in this grade. This was my teacher. These were my friends that I had. Oh yeah, this is a vacation that we went on. Okay, and I was able to reconstruct it that way. But you want to know my favorite way? If you're stepping into now recording your stories, our children aren't going to be able to read every single thing, but I think having a chronological order is important for historical data. But if you set a timer for 20 minutes and then you put pen to paper and you write as fast as you can, and all you're going to do is remember those highlights in your life, those experiences that come to you. And some of them are going to be, oh, that was a really hard one. And oh, I learned a lot there. And that was a mistake I made. You want all of them, but don't filter what you're writing down. Just write as fast as you can and go that 20 minutes. And at 20 minutes, if you're still writing, just keep going and get as much of that out there as you can. And once you have this list, I want you to go back and I want you to look at that list. And the ones that have a little bit of juice to them or a little bit of pull to them, that's where I want you to lean in a little bit. That's the first place I want you to start writing. And why is that? When we have something that we're emotional about, when we remember a lot of details about, that's kind of like pulling the plug out of the dike. And once we start on that story and start deconstructing what happened, it's amazing. The next experience then opens up for us, and the next experience, and the next experience. And all of a sudden you start seeing patterns in your life. You start being able to reconstruct the puzzle pieces that have started to fit together. No experience is ever wasted. You don't have to recount every single story in your life, but those most important ones that you want your children, you want the world to know, start with those. But remember, this is your story. Tell it. Unleash it. So how do you want to record it? All right, you may be one of those journalers. You may be one of those that have had a diary since you're in 5th grade and you haven't missed a day for your however many years you're alive. That is not me. But there are many of you that enjoy that. I do enjoy journaling, and over the last 8 years, that has been my daily thing, to write, to put pen to paper, to be able to write. Now with this thing, I found my next favorite, my notes. Go in my notes, dictate, and then I could also pull in pictures in that. So I'm actually creating like a little digital scrapbook of sorts. With the technology we have today, it's so easy to record things. You don't even have to really handwrite if you don't want to. Go into a Word doc and push the dictation mic and just start speaking. Perhaps you're one that records your personal stories on social media. I have a lot of friends that at the end of the year, they take their Instagram feed, etc., and they create a book made out of it for their family. My suggestion is, though, have something for you personally as an adult place where you wrestle with things, where you record your inner thoughts. That's where the growth comes. So we have digital versions of scrapbooking, but some of you might be those tried and true, like, I like that physical scrapbooking. I like the artistic endeavor of being able to use paper and stories and photographs. Continue with whatever medium speaks to you. The important thing is to do something, to record something. Now, maybe your thing is art. Maybe do sculpture, painting, whatever. Maybe art is how you record your history, and it's symbolically representing something. Then you have a story that goes along with it. Or maybe you start a blog or a website where you regularly share your stories and your experiences. So what are some of the ways that you record your stories? What do you do? The important thing is to get them down. When we're in the here and now, we're going to remember more details. With all of this, we need to think about how to preserve it. Now, in the old days, they used to carve it on a plate and hide it in a hill. For us now, it's about digitizing. Even if we have physical copies of things, we can digitize it, put it on an external hard drive, put it on the cloud, some way to preserve it. But if you're only doing videotapes, maybe think about including transcripts also, so that your stories don't get lost. We do live in a very interesting time, and it's a time of, it can look like gloss when you look at social media, but I think the stories that are the most relatable are the ones that are vulnerable, the ones that are authentic. while I don't believe that we have to write every single detail and we don't have to bear all, I think when people understand that no one is really perfect, nobody is trying to be perfect, it's that authenticity that connects people to each other. So there are some prompts that I have or some things that you can include, but I'm more excited in just a second to tell you some questions that you might pose yourself when you start writing your stories. And I'll tell you why in just a second. But some of the things that you can include in writing your story would be share those stories about your ancestors. In episode actually number 68, I talked about that poll to find our ancestors and ways that you can find them. They are the root to our tree after all, right? Their stories are significant to our own personal history. Add some significant life events. Add in there the milestones, your first job, your marriage, your children, etc. All that information. What travel adventures did you have? Where have you been? What are some of the professional endeavors, your goals, awards? But also put in there your hobbies and your passions. What's something unique about you? Or a memorable place that it just was life-changing for you? What about those inspirational figures, those people who really had an effect on your life? And I think it's always nice if we add, what's the advice we have for our future generations? Which leads me into some of those questions that I'm excited to pose to you when you think about writing. I think we live in a time like no other, and the challenges that we face and our children face are going to require courage, problem solving, creativity, resilience, and that discernment. And if my stories that I have, if they can demonstrate strategies that can help them in the future, help them overcome, help them learn, and help them recover from mistakes, then I want to make sure that I am bringing forth those stories to be able to help them. So I have a couple different prompts, question prompts that I absolutely love, and I want you to think about these. If you haven't had a chance to write these down and want these, you can also reach out to me at info@nobrainers.com and I'll send you the full list of them. But here are some of them, and when I start to read them, you'll see why I feel recording our stories in this manner is significant. Here's one. Can you recall a time when you faced a significant setback or failure? How did you initially respond? And then what steps did you take to overcome it? How did that experience shape you? Okay, think about that. If I am telling a story and then I'm giving the steps and the resolution and how I made it through, can you imagine the impact that has on those that read it? Another one, share a personal story where you felt overwhelmed or defeated. How did you find strength to make it through the motivation to keep going? And what lessons on resilience did you learn? And another one, describe a situation when you had to step outside your comfort zone or face a fear. And then how did you navigate through that? And what impact did that have on you personally? Just two more I'm going to give you. Share a story of a time when you encountered significant resistance or opposition to your goals or your ideas. How did you handle those challenges? And what strategies did you use to overcome them? This would be powerful information, right? Tied up with a personal story about someone they know. And this last one, share a story where you faced criticism or rejection. And how did you handle that negativity? This is a big one right now, especially for our teen population. When they're facing negativity, they're facing rejection, they're facing comparison right in their face, and it's delivered right to their phone any given moment of the day. So what in your story can tell them about how you maintained confidence and you moved through that rejection? How powerful would that be? It's never too late for us to start writing our stories. And words are powerful. And your legacy is in your words. So unleash your story. How did you overcome? What's a pivotal moment in your life? Write it down in the comments. Let us know what you've done or what you experienced that made a difference in your life and how you overcame. You know, we're creators. We have the capacity and the power to create our lives. And you're not going to want to miss next week, because some of you might say, you know what, I want to rewrite my story. I don't want the past to be me. And we know the past isn't us. It's what we've experienced. We have an opportunity to create the future. But there are some tools that conscious creators use that can really take you into a place of transformation. And next week, you're going to learn those tools. So I hope you'll come back and let's rewrite an addition to our stories. As always, thank you for joining. Tally ho. We'll see you next week.